As the Exorix fleet approached Earth, Captain Varnak's hands tightened around the controls of his command ship, the Astareth. His species had encountered countless worlds, each of them teeming with life, some hostile, others submissive. Earth, however, was different. It lay on the edge of the galaxy, isolated and unimportant in the grand scheme of things. Yet the Exorix had received reports, whispers, really, that there was something unusual about this planet, something unsettling. The fleet's communications officer, an adept technician named Zilia, checked the status of the broadcast again. "Captain," she said, her voice cold, "we've tried all standard frequencies. Still no response." "Run another sweep," Varnak ordered, though his gut told him the answer would be the same. Earth's atmosphere, unremarkable to the scanners at first glance, now felt like a wall, a barrier that neither the Dominion's technology nor its intelligence had anticipated. For a long moment, the hum of the ship's systems filled the silence. The Exorix had long since developed the ability to manipulate matter on a molecular level, to communicate across vast distances with ease. But Earth seemed to resist every effort to make contact. It was as though the planet itself was waiting. "There's something off about this," Varnak muttered under his breath. He turned toward his first officer, a battle-hardened Exorix named Jolan. "What do you make of it?" Jolan's narrow, reptilian eyes scanned the planet below them. He was known for his cold, calculating demeanor, and even now, his gaze remained unfazed. "It's possible that the primitive species on this world lack the ability to communicate on our level," he said. "Perhaps the planet is less sophisticated than we thought." Varnak narrowed his eyes. "No, it's not just that. This silence feels intentional, as if they are deliberately hiding something." A subtle vibration shook the ship, and the sudden anomaly caught everyone's attention. The sensors were picking up something new. A signal, faint but unmistakable, pulsed across the cosmic frequency. But instead of the typical response of desperation or submission, it was cryptic, disjointed, like static, but with an undertone of something else, something foreign. "Captain," Zilia said, her voice sharp with realization, This isn't random noise. It's deliberate. A message, perhaps, or a warning." "From then?" Varnak asked, leaning forward. He instinctively reached for his communicator, but his fingers hesitated. "Could be," Zilia responded, though her tone lacked confidence. "Or it's something else entirely. They're either warning us or they're watching us. Whatever it is, Captain, Earth knows we're here, and they haven't made a move." Varnak's mind raced. For the first time in his career, he felt a flicker of unease. The Exorix had never encountered anything like this. They had swept through systems far more advanced than Earth's without resistance. Why would a planet, with no notable history of spacefaring or advanced technology, be so silent? "Prepare the landing teams," Varnak said. "We need to find out what's happening on the surface. I want eyes on Earth, immediately." But as the fleet moved to begin its invasion, one thing became clear. The silence, the waiting, wasn't an invitation. It was a warning. The Exorix forces touched down on Earth's surface under the cover of darkness. The vast fleet remained stationed in orbit, but the first wave, an elite squadron of stealth operatives, descended quietly over the barren Nevada desert, far from any human cities. Their mission was simple: assess Earth's defenses, capture any human resistance, and gather intelligence. With their cloaking technology in place, the aliens blended seamlessly into the desert night, invisible to the primitive human sensors. Varnak watched the deployment from his command chair aboard the Asteroth, his fingers tapping restlessly on the console. He couldn't shake the feeling that this was too easy. There was no mass panic from the humans, no desperate scramble to hide from the invaders. The silence on Earth wasn't a sign of fear. It was the silence of something far more calculated, far more dangerous. "Report," Varnak barked into his communicator. "Captain, the landing sites are clear." Jolan's voice crackled through the static. "The teams are moving forward with the reconnaissance. No hostile presence detected so far." Varnak's eyes narrowed. "Keep monitoring. I want constant updates. If anything feels off, pull them back." His orders were met with a silent acknowledgement. He watched as his troops, cloaked in the harsh desert terrain, scattered to begin their work. They were highly trained in stealth operations, capable of moving undetected, learning all they could about a planet before launching a full-scale invasion. But Earth was different. On the ground, the aliens moved carefully, scanning the area with their advanced tech, mapping out the environment. Yet, the more they ventured deeper into the desert, the more they felt an unnerving sense of being watched. It wasn't just the endless stretch of sand and rock that unnerved them. It was the unnatural stillness, the feeling that there were eyes on them, just beyond the horizon waiting. Then they met Dean Carter. Dean had been a contract engineer for the US military, working on classified projects. For years, he'd been teaching survival tactics in the Nevada wilderness, helping teach government agents how to navigate remote terrain. His background in electronics had served him well, allowing him to invent tools to disrupt electronic signals. He'd never imagined that his skills would one day be needed to fight a war, but here they were. When the first of the Exarix soldiers moved into his area, Dean didn't flinch. He had been watching them for hours from his hidden vantage point. As one alien stepped too close to a carefully laid trap, Dean activated a small device in his hand. The pulse hit the soldier's helmet, causing a temporary malfunction in his neural systems. The alien dropped to the ground, unconscious. Dean moved swiftly and with precision, disabled the remaining soldiers' communications and weapons. The Exarix were momentarily disoriented, unsure of what had just happened. "What the hell?" muttered one of the alien operatives, scrambling to fix their equipment. But it was too late. The rest of the humans in the desert had already begun to converge, using guerrilla tactics and primitive, but effective, weaponry to subdue the invaders. From the command ship, Varnak's expression darkened. "Impossible," he murmured as he watched the live feed of his soldiers retreating. Earth had just struck its first blow, and it was far from the primitive, defenseless world he had anticipated. Back aboard the Asteroth, Captain Varnak sat in stunned silence, staring at the feed from Earth. His soldiers, equipped with the finest technology that Exarix Dominion had to offer, had been bested by a single human, a man who, as far as their intelligence could tell, didn't even possess advanced weapons or defenses. This was more than an unexpected setback. It was a puzzle, one that gnawed at Varnak's mind. "We cannot let this continue," Varnak finally spoke, his voice cold, but taut with tension. "Prepare the second wave. This time, we'll hit them harder. Deploy our full ground forces." Jolan, standing beside him, nodded grimly. "Understood, Captain. We'll sweep through the desert and neutralize any pockets of resistance." But Varnak wasn't entirely convinced. What had just happened? One human outsmarting an entire squad of elite Exarix soldiers was almost inconceivable. And it wasn't just that Dean Carter had outmaneuvered them. It was how seamlessly he'd done it. There was no sign of desperation, no fear. Just a calculated, methodical attack. Varnek's instincts told him that something deeper was at play, and he couldn't afford to ignore it. "I want all data on Earth's communications history," he ordered. "Every transmission, every signal, every radio wave sent into space for the past 100 years. I want to know everything." Zilia, the communications officer, nodded, already inputting the command into her console. "Captain, it'll take time to go through the archives, but we'll start immediately." Meanwhile, on Earth, the human resistance had begun to take shape. Dean Carter, now leading a growing group of survivors, moved with military precision through the desert, carefully setting up traps and gathering information. The humans were not only surviving, they were adapting, and with each encounter, they grew bolder. At the same time, Emily Hawthorne, a quantum physicist working with the military on a top-secret government project in a lab just outside of Salt Lake City, was deep into research on the alien signal the humans had intercepted days earlier. Emily, who had spent her career investigating the fringes of theoretical physics, had been chosen to analyze the encrypted message sent from the alien ships. But as she combed through the data, she began to notice something strange. The static wasn't random. The encrypted message wasn't simply a communication attempt. It was something else, something far older. A pattern began to emerge. Emily's fingers hovered over her keyboard as she zoomed in on a section of the signal, her eyes widening with disbelief. What she was seeing didn't fit any of the known patterns for alien communication. In fact, it didn't fit any patterns at all. The signal was ancient, older than any human civilization, yet it was clearly directed toward Earth. The strange energy patterns embedded within the message were unmistakable. Earth had been marked. This revelation sent a shockwave through Emily's body. For the first time, she felt the weight of the situation, the fact that humanity had unknowingly been the custodians of something far more powerful than they could comprehend. Meanwhile, far above in the stars, Varnek was also making a discovery of his own. The more his team sifted through Earth's communications history, the more certain it became. Earth's silence wasn't accidental. It was a defense mechanism embedded deep within the planet's core. And it had been waiting for something just like the Exurix to arrive. Humanity, it seemed, had more than a few surprises up its sleeve. And now the Exurix were about to find out just how deep those surprises ran. The Exurix Dominion had underestimated Earth in ways that were beginning to feel like a fatal mistake. Captain Varnek's next wave of invasion forces descended, a full-scale assault designed to crush any remnants of resistance. This time, they would not rely on stealth or subterfuge. The sheer might of the Exurix military would overwhelm humanity. They sent thousands of soldiers, armed with plasma rifles and devastating war machines, to strike at key population centers. Varnek, however, was still uneasy. The silence, the lack of communication from Earth's leaders, everything about this operation felt off. At the same time, the human resistance had grown, fueled by unexpected victories and the shock of the alien invasion. Dean Carter's desert resistance had swelled with fighters, survivors, and military veterans who had honed the art of guerrilla warfare. They didn't have the firepower to match the Exurix, but they had something more: ingenuity, resourcefulness, and a relentless will to survive. Dean, now a de facto leader of the underground movement, stood with his small but growing army in a makeshift command center, a weathered structure deep in the Nevada desert. He was the one who had first struck back against the Exurix, but now his mission was different. The aliens weren't just invaders. They were a threat to the entire world. Dean's group was fighting for more than survival. They were fighting for the future of the human race. "We can't keep running forever," Dean said, looking over maps and satellite images of the alien forces. His voice was calm but firm. "We've got to take the fight to them. If we get them now, while they're still disorganized, we can push them back." His right-hand woman, Olivia Harper, a former army strategist, studied the maps alongside him. "Their forces are spread out, but the Exurics are adapting fast. They'll start reinforcing key cities soon. Our window of opportunity is closing." Dean's eyes flicked over to the live feed from Emily Hawthorne, the quantum physicist who had cracked the alien signal. She'd been working with the military to understand the alien technology and, more importantly, the strange energy patterns she had discovered embedded in the signals. Emily had found something remarkable. Earth's atmosphere and core were reacting to the alien presence, as if the planet itself was aware of the threat and fighting back. The silent warning to the Exurics was more than just a signal. It was a living, breathing defense mechanism. Emily's voice came over the speaker, her tone sharp with excitement. "Dean, I figured it out. The energy surges we're seeing, they are not just random. Earth is reacting to the invaders. We've got a window to tap into that energy, to turn the planet's natural defenses into a weapon." Dean's heart quickened. "How soon can you get us the data?" "Within the hour," Emily replied, her voice crackling with static. "But we need to act fast. Once the Exurics realize what's happening, they'll counterattack. This is our one shot." Dean nodded grimly. "Prepare for the counterattack. We're going to get them hard, right at their supply lines. If we can disrupt their logistics, we'll cripple their ability to fight back." The moment of reckoning had come. The humans were no longer just defending themselves. They were striking back with everything they had. Earth was no longer a silent, helpless world. It was an active participant in its own defense, and the Exurics were about to find out exactly how dangerous that could be. Dean's small team set off toward the heart of the alien forces, their minds set on one thing: turning the tide of war. The war had shifted in humanity's favor, but the Exurics' dominion had yet to feel the full force of Earth's resistance. While the humans had made significant progress in the desert and smaller cities, Varnak was already preparing his next step: a full planetary bombardment to force Earth's submission. He would not allow this primitive world to stand in defiance, not after what had happened. But far below, Earth was changing. The unexpected energy surges that had been detected by Emily Hawthorne were not just a reaction to the alien presence. They were a message, a warning. The more Emily studied the data, the clearer it became. Earth was alive in ways the Exurics had never considered. The planet's core, long thought to be a simple molten mass, was resonating with energy pulses that matched the Exurics' frequency. But it wasn't just responding. It was manipulating the energy in ways that suggested an ancient intelligence had once harnessed this power. Emily had cracked the final piece of the puzzle. The energy surges were defensive mechanisms built into the planet itself, an automated system designed to protect Earth from invasions. A system that had been dormant for millennia, now awakening in response to the Exurics' threat. "Captain," Emily spoke into the comms, her voice steady despite the implications of her discovery. "What we're seeing isn't just an atmospheric anomaly. Earth's core is actively interacting with the alien signals. It's activating a defense grid we didn't know existed. It's almost as if the planet is alive." Dean Carter's voice crackled through the speaker, now part of the global resistance network. "We've been fighting on the ground, but it's clear now. Earth's fight isn't just ours. It's the planet's too." Jackson Reed, a retired Navy officer who had been coordinating the human resistance in North America, stood with his back to the map. His face was hard, set in grim determination. "Emily, if what you're saying is true, can we use this energy to launch a counterattack? Can we weaponize it?" Emily paused for a long beat. "We might be able to. The energy surge we're detecting isn't just interference, it's potential. If we can tap into it, we could turn Earth's natural defenses into something more tangible, more precise. We could disrupt the Exorix fleet in orbit, cripple their communication, even bring down some of their ships." Dean nodded. "Then it's time we stopped playing defense." Jackson gripped his rifle. "We'd hit their main base of operations in the mountains, disrupt their communications, take out their command structure. We'll use this energy to hit them where it hurts." As the final pieces of the plan came together, the human resistance launched their most daring attack yet. A coordinated assault on one of the largest HFY command centers nestled deep in the Rockies. Dean, leading the charge, was ready to prove that humanity had learned to fight on its terms, not the aliens. But what neither Dean nor Emily knew was that Varnak was already preparing his final gambit. A full-scale bombardment to wipe out humanity once and for all. The clock was ticking, and the Exorix were growing desperate. What the captain didn't realize was that Earth had already begun to fight back on a scale he could never have imagined. And humanity's greatest weapon wasn't its military, its technology, or its strategy. It was the planet itself. The Exorix fleet had never experienced anything like it. As Earth's natural defenses awakened, the alien ships in orbit began to falter. What started as small disturbances in their communications systems quickly spiraled into full-scale chaos. The energy surges that had begun near the planet's core had reached the atmosphere, and now they were disrupting the Exorix fleet's most advanced technologies. Their shields flickered, their weapons systems failed, and their fleet communications became garbled static. The once invincible armada, capable of toppling entire civilizations, was now crippled by a force they couldn't control. From his command seat aboard the Astareth, Captain Varnak's mind raced. His soldiers, scattered across Earth, had failed to overcome the human resistance. And now his fleet was in chaos. He knew he had only one choice, to retreat. But the thought of retreating from a planet so seemingly primitive, so unimportant, filled him with rage. This was not how the Exorix Dominion operated. Yet, the more he fought against Earth's silent power, the more it became clear. Earth had something that no other world had. A will to survive, and a force that transcended even the might of the Exorix fleet. Status report. Varnak barked, slamming his fist against the console. Zilia, his communications officer, responded, her voice shaking with urgency. "Captain, we've lost contact with several of our ground units. The energy interference is disabling all communication lines. We're cut off from the surface and unable to coordinate the retreat. The humans are everywhere." Varnak's gaze turned cold. "It's not just the humans," he muttered under his breath. "This planet is fighting back. It's alive." He turned toward Jolan, who had been scanning the data from the surface. "We can't afford to lose this battle. The Exorix Dominion will not let a world like this survive if it proves this level of resistance. Our next move must be decisive." Jolan, though equally disturbed by the unprecedented phenomenon, agreed. "We must destroy the source of the interference. We need to identify where these energy surges are originating. If we can shut it down, we can regain control. Without it, we will lose everything." As Varnak processed the implications of Jolan's words, a deeper unease settled in his chest. The longer they delayed, the more the human resistance flourished. The Earth had somehow turned their own tactics against them, exploiting their weaknesses and using the very forces they sought to conquer. Meanwhile, Dean Carter, leading the human resistance forces across the continent, felt the shift in the battle. The surge of energy was stronger now, more focused, and it wasn't just disrupting the Exorix fleet. It was allowing the human forces to attack in ways they hadn't before. Using the data from Emily Hawthorne's analysis, they'd crafted weapons that synchronized with the planet's energy pulses, turning the interference into a tactical advantage. "Move out!" Dean shouted to his team as they prepared for their next assault, this time on Exorix command station high in the Rocky Mountains, where their fleet's remaining leadership had set up a makeshift headquarters. The battle had gone from survival to offensive, and the humans were no longer fighting for their lives, they were fighting for victory. But deep in space, the Exorix weren't going down without a fight. Varnak's next plan would be their most desperate yet, a final, cataclysmic attempt to obliterate Earth. The real war had only just begun. In orbit above Earth, Captain Varnak was reaching the end of his patience. His fleet was crippled, his ground forces in disarray, and his command structure all but obliterated. The energy surges emanating from the planet were unlike anything the Exorix had ever encountered. Earth wasn't just a world, it was an anomaly, an entity that had begun to fight back, and Varnak knew that if he didn't act swiftly, the Exorix dominion would lose this war. And that was an outcome he could not allow. "We must end this now," Varnak said, his voice steely and determined. "Deploy the Ultima Catalyst. It's time to wipe this planet clean." Jolan, standing at his side, glanced at the screen displaying a schematic of the Ultima Catalyst, a massive weapon of mass destruction that had been kept in reserve for only the most dire of circumstances. A device capable of tearing apart an entire planet, turning Earth into little more than a lifeless husk. "It's a calculated risk, Captain," Joran said carefully, his voice betraying a hint of doubt. "Using the catalyst will destroy everything we've tried to conquer here. The resources, the intelligence, the infrastructure." "I am aware," Varnak snapped, "but we cannot allow this planet's defenses to grow any stronger. The longer we wait, the more the humans adapt. If we wait any longer, we risk losing the entire fleet. Deploy the weapon. It will erase the interference and render Earth's defense mechanism useless. We won't need to invade. The planet will be neutralized." Meanwhile, on Earth's surface, Dean Carter and the Resistance had managed to infiltrate a Exorix command station deep in the Rockies. They had already sabotaged the enemy's communications and disabled several of their high-tech defenses, but the battle was far from over. "We're almost there," Dean muttered, glancing over his shoulder at his team. Olivia Harper, Jackson Reed, and the rest of the fighters were moving with purpose, clearing the way as they made their way deeper into the heart of the Exorix stronghold. It was a dangerous mission, one that could either cripple the enemy's command structure or lead them straight into a death trap. But the battle was no longer about survival, it was about winning. "Dean, we've got a problem," Olivia said, her voice tense. She pointed to a series of energy pulses flaring on her monitor. "This isn't just a response to our attacks, it's coming from orbit." Dean's heart skipped a beat. "What do you mean? What's happening?" Emily's voice crackled through their communication network. "Dean, the Exorix are preparing to launch the Ultima Catalyst. If they fire it, they'll destroy the planet and everything on it. You need to stop them." Dean's mind raced. Earth's defenses had bought them time, but now the Exorix were about to turn the tide with a weapon that could obliterate everything. "Do we have a way to stop it?" Dean asked, gripping his rifle tighter. Emily's voice came through, almost breathless. "There's a trigger, a satellite relay. You need to disable the command center before they launch the catalyst. If you can take it out, you can stop the weapon. Dean's eyes hardened. Understood. Let's finish this. With urgency and precision, Dean and his team raced toward the final leg of their mission. They were no longer just fighting for survival. They were fighting for the very future of Earth. But with the Ultima Catalyst now primed for launch, time was running out. High above, in the blackness of space, Varnak initiated the final countdown, unaware that humanity's last stand was already underway. And on Earth, the stakes had never been higher. The battle for survival was no longer just a war for a planet. It was a war for the soul of the galaxy. The countdown had begun. Varnak's fingers hovered over the control panel in his command chamber aboard the Astaroth. The Ultima Catalyst, a weapon capable of obliterating not just Earth's defenses, but the very core of the planet itself, was ready. The countdown clock was ticking, and every second brought them closer to victory, or to Earth's utter destruction. Captain, Zilia's voice came through the comms, filled with a note of uncertainty. We're detecting unusual fluctuations in the energy readings. The surges from the planet's core, they're becoming erratic, almost like the planet is trying to anticipate our move. Varnak's eyes narrowed. He had noticed it too. The interference had grown stronger as the countdown neared zero. The planet's defense mechanism had become more aggressive, more focused, as if it could sense the imminent threat. But Earth wasn't just fighting to survive anymore. It was fighting to keep its soul intact. Varnak could feel it, even in the cold void of space. And yet, he couldn't stop the weapon now. His fleet was too vulnerable, and if he hesitated, all would be lost. Continue the countdown, Varnak ordered, his voice cold. No matter what happens, we finish this now. On the surface of Earth, Dean Carter and the human resistance had reached the final objective. The Exurix command station nestled deep in the Rocky Mountains. But there was no time to celebrate their progress. They were running out of options. The Ultima Catalyst was moments away from firing, and they had to disable the satellite relay that would transmit the final launch signal. Dean, we've got enemy reinforcements, Olivia said, her voice tense as she peered through the scope of her rifle. They've deployed a full battalion. We can't fight our way through this. Dean looked at the makeshift map on his tablet. The satellite relay station was in sight, but so were dozens of heavily armed Exurix soldiers. Every minute mattered. We don't need to fight them all. Just buy us enough time to get inside. He turned to Jackson, who had been monitoring the communications channels. We disable the relay. Everything else is secondary. Got it, Jackson replied, his face set in determination. The human team moved swiftly, using the planet's own terrain to their advantage. As they approached the command center, the Exurix soldiers were distracted by their earlier attacks, leaving an opening for the humans to infiltrate. With a final sprint, they reached the relay station's access point. The security system was active, but nothing could stop the human resolve. Dean and Olivia breached the doors, while Jackson worked quickly to disable the security protocols. Back in space, the countdown was now at 30 seconds. Captain, they're almost there, Jolan reported, his voice taut with anticipation. This is it. But just as the final launch signal was about to be transmitted, a massive surge of energy from Earth's surface disrupted the Ultima Catalyst. Varnak watched, horrified, as the energy interference grew exponentially, overwhelming the system. It was too late. A blinding pulse of light erupted from Earth's core, sending shockwaves through space. The Ultima Catalyst detonated prematurely, its destructive force radiating outward. But instead of obliterating Earth, the planet's defense system had turned the weapon against the Exurics. On the surface, the Resistance watched in awe as the sky above them shimmered, and the once crippled alien fleet began to disintegrate, its ships burning in a cosmic firestorm. The Exurics forces scattered in panic, their technology failing them in the face of Earth's raw, untamable power. Varnek's voice trembled as he realized the defeat was irreversible. Retreat. Retreat now. But it was already too late. Earth had won. Against all odds, humanity had fought back and turned the tables, proving that the silent planet had more power than anyone could have imagined. Earth was no longer just a world in the shadows. It was a force to be reckoned with. And as the Exurics fleet limped away into the depths of space, leaving Earth behind, the message was clear: humanity would not be subdued. The silence of Earth, once terrifying to the aliens, had been the very thing that had saved them. Dean Carter stood atop a ridge, looking out at the smoke rising from the wreckage of the Exuric stronghold. The battle had been won, but Earth had only just begun to show its true strength. And in the silence that followed, there was no question left. Earth would never be silenced again.